Chapters 5 and 6 of Book 6 of Les Miserables, Volume 3, by Victor Hugo. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bruce Peary. Les Miserables, Volume 3, by Victor Hugo. Translated by Isabel Florence Hapgood. Book 6. The Conjunction of Two Stars. Chapter 5. Divers claps of thunder fall on Ma'am Bougon. On the following day, Ma'am Bougon, as Courfeyrac styled the old portress principal tenant, housekeeper of the Gorbeau hovel, Ma'am Bougon, whose name was in reality Madame Bourgon, as we have found out, but this iconoclast Courfeyrac respected nothing, Ma'am Bougon observed with stupefaction that Monsieur Marius was going out again in his new coat. He went to the Luxembourg again, but he did not proceed further than his bench midway of the alley. He seated himself there, as on the preceding day, surveying from a distance and clearly making out the white bonnet, the black dress, and above all, that blue light. He did not stir from it, and only went home when the gates of the Luxembourg closed. He did not see Monsieur Leblanc and his daughter retire. He concluded that they had quitted the garden by the gate on the Rue de l'Ouest. Later on, several weeks afterwards, when he came to think it over, he could never recall where he had dined that evening. On the following day, which was the 3rd, Ma'am Bougon was thunderstruck. Marius went out in his new coat. 3 days in succession, she exclaimed. She tried to follow him, but Marius walked briskly and with immense strides. It was a hippopotamus undertaking the pursuit of a chamois. She lost sight of him in 2 minutes, and returned breathless, 3/4 choked with asthma, and furious. "If there is any sense," she growled, "in putting on one's best clothes every day, and making people run like this." Marius betook himself to the Luxembourg. The young girl was there with Monsieur Leblanc. Marius approached as near as he could, pretending to be busy reading a book, but he halted afar off, then returned and seated himself on his bench, where he spent 4 hours in watching the house sparrows who were skipping about the walk, and who produced on him the impression that they were making sport of him. A fortnight passed thus. Marius went to the Luxembourg no longer for the sake of strolling there, but to seat himself always in the same spot, and that without knowing why. Once arrived there, he did not stir. He put on his new coat every morning for the purpose of not showing himself, and he began all over again on the morrow. She was decidedly a marvellous beauty. The only remark approaching a criticism that could be made was that the contradiction between her gaze, which was melancholy, and her smile, which was merry, gave a rather wild effect to her face, which sometimes caused this sweet countenance to become strange, without ceasing to be charming. Chapter 6. Taken Prisoner. On one of the last days of the 2nd week, Marius was seated on his bench as usual, holding in his hand an open book, of which he had not turned a page for the last 2 hours. All at once he started. An event was taking place at the other extremity of the walk. Leblanc and his daughter had just left their seat, and the daughter had taken her father's arm, and both were advancing slowly towards the middle of the alley where Marius was. Marius closed his book, then opened it again, then forced himself to read. He trembled. The aureole was coming straight towards him. "Ah, good heavens," thought he, "I shall not have time to strike an attitude." Still the white-haired man and the girl advanced. It seemed to him that this lasted for a century, and that it was but a second. "What are they coming in this direction for?" he asked himself. "What, she will pass here? Her feet will tread this sand, this walk, 2 paces from me?" He was utterly upset. He would have liked to be very handsome. He would have liked to own the cross. He heard the soft and measured sound of their approaching footsteps. He imagined that Monsieur Leblanc was darting angry glances at him. "Is that gentleman going to address me?" he thought to himself. He dropped his head. When he raised it again, they were very near him. The young girl passed, and as she passed, she glanced at him. She gazed steadily at him, with a pensive sweetness which thrilled Marius from head to foot. It seemed to him that she was reproaching him for having allowed so long a time to elapse without coming as far as her, and that she was saying to him, "I am coming myself." Marius was dazzled by those eyes fraught with rays and abysses. He felt his brain on fire. She had come to him. What joy! And then how she had looked at him! She appeared to him more beautiful than he had ever seen her yet. Beautiful with a beauty which was wholly feminine and angelic, with a complete beauty which would have made Petrarch sing and Dante kneel. It seemed to him that he was floating free in the azure heavens. At the same time he was horribly vexed, because there was dust on his boots. He thought he felt sure that she had looked at his boots too. He followed her with his eyes until she disappeared. Then he started up and walked about the Luxembourg garden like a madman. It is possible that at times he laughed to himself and talked aloud. He was so dreamy when he came near the children's nurses that each one of them thought him in love with her. He quitted the Luxembourg, hoping to find her again in the street. He encountered Courfeyrac under the arcades of the Odeon, and said to him, "Come and dine with me." They went off to Rousseau's and spent 6 francs. Marius ate like an ogre. He gave the waiter 6 sous. At dessert he said to Courfeyrac, "Have you read the paper? What a fine discourse Audry de Puyraveau delivered." He was desperately in love. After dinner he said to Courfeyrac, "I will treat you to the play." They went to the Porte Saint-Martin to see Frédéric in l'Auberge des Adrets. Marius was enormously amused. At the same time he had a redoubled attack of shyness. On emerging from the theatre he refused to look at the garter of a modiste who was stepping across a gutter, and Courfeyrac, who said, "I should like to put that woman in my collection," almost horrified him. Courfeyrac invited him to breakfast at the Café Voltaire on the following morning. Marius went thither, and ate even more than on the preceding evening. He was very thoughtful and very merry. One would have said that he was taking advantage of every occasion to laugh uproariously. He tenderly embraced some man or other from the provinces who was presented to him. A circle of students formed round the table, and they spoke of the nonsense paid for by the state which was uttered from the rostrum in the Sorbonne. Then the conversation fell upon the faults and omissions in Guicherat's dictionaries and grammars. Marius interrupted the discussion to exclaim, "But it is very agreeable, all the same, to have the cross." "That's queer," whispered Courfeyrac to Jean Prouvaire. "No," responded Prouvaire, "that's serious." It was serious. In fact, Marius had reached that first violent and charming hour with which grand passions begin. A glance had wrought all this. When the mine is charged, when the conflagration is ready, nothing is more simple. A glance is a spark. It was all over with him. Marius loved a woman. His fate was entering the unknown. The glance of women resembles certain combinations of wheels which are tranquil in appearance, yet formidable. You pass close to them every day, peaceably and with impunity, and without a suspicion of anything. A moment arrives when you forget that the thing is there. You go and come, dream, speak, laugh. All at once you feel yourself clutched. All is over. The wheels hold you fast. The glance has ensnared you. It has caught you, no matter where or how, by some portion of your thought which was fluttering loose, by some distraction which had attacked you. You are lost. The whole of you passes into it. A chain of mysterious forces takes possession of you. You struggle in vain. No more human succor is possible. You go on falling from gearing to gearing, from agony to agony, from torture to torture, you, your mind, your fortune, your future, your soul. And according to whether you are in the power of a wicked creature or of a noble heart, you will not escape from this terrifying machine otherwise than disfigured